everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you a recent reads video. It has been a week since I filmed my last recent reads video. I read 7 things this past week, so let's jump straight in and talk about all of them. So the first book I completed in this last week was Summer Skin by Kirsty Eager. This is it's an Australian new adult romance, kind of. So it basically focuses on a female character named Jess who the previous year, she goes to a co-ed university. I thought this was set in high school when I first started it, and then I realized it's actually in uni. So she goes to a co-ed university, but nearby there is an all-boys university, which I don't know if that's like a real thing. I've never heard of a single-sex university in Australia. I know obviously the universities are fake, but I don't think that that's actually a thing that we have in Australia in any event. So the previous year, the boys' university set up this challenge where the winner was like the first person who managed to sleep with one of the girls from the co-ed university, but in order to like verify that he had done this task, he had to stream the sexual encounter to a panel of judges. And the main character's best friend is the girl that got slept with and had the sexual encounter was consensual, but she didn't consent to having the 3 judges watch it without her knowledge. And so that happened the previous year. It's now the current school year, and Jess and her group of friends are kind of trying to take charge this year and have set up this thing. They're trying to get back at the boys. They're basically telling people they don't want anyone to sleep with any of the boys from this college. And also, it's not like a set rule, but they're saying don't sleep with any of the boys from the college. And then also there's this whole like kind of prank thing at the start. However, a romance kind of ensues between Jess and one of the boys from the all-boys college, university, whatever. That was a really long-winded, terrible description. So I bought this book several years ago now, and I bought it because I knew I'd heard about it at that time, but now in the present day I didn't remember a lot about it. So I actually went back to my marked as to read video when I'd marked this as to read. And so I'd marked this as to read because I'd just randomly seen someone on Goodreads mark this as 5 stars and call it one of the sexiest like YA books that they'd read. I would classify this as new adult. It is set at university, like I said. But it is very sexy, but like in a good way, I think. So I really enjoyed this. I was skeptical going into this because since I'd marked this as to read and purchased it, I'd read another book by Kirsty Eager, which I think was called Night Beach, and I really didn't enjoy that book. I think I gave it 2 stars, and so I was a bit skeptical going into this. And then when I first started, I was a little bit skeptical as well because the premise didn't sound like necessarily it would be the most feminist of storylines, but it is pretty feminist in a lot of ways. It's very sex positive. The main female character is quite feminist, and there's a lot of her owning her own sexuality and her own sexual desires, and there's talk about masturbation a little bit and just things like that, and she never feels shame for any of her sexual desires or any of that, and I really liked that. But she's also grappling with, you know, wanting to have a romance but have a respectful romance, and I really liked that. I really liked the romance. Like I said, I did think it was really sexy. I really liked a lot of what was going on in here. The characters felt very real. It just felt very real is the gist of the story, and I ended up giving this 4 stars. I then read The Winter Sister by Megan Collins. This is a book that I had received from NetGalley. I received the e-arc free for review. So this is a thriller. It's about a woman who, when she was 14, I think she was 14 and her sister was 16, whatever. When she was a teenager, her older sister went, Giles' tale, went missing. And like 3 days later, I think it is, her body's found, she's been murdered, and it's now several years later, and the mystery has never been solved, and the main character is returning to the town where she grew up to now take care of her mother. Her mother is dying. She goes to take care of her, and she ends up running across her sister's boyfriend at the time that she was murdered, who the main character has always felt like was the culprit and that he just got away with it. And so this ticks a lot of my boxes in thrillers. I love thrillers that are about a mystery in the past that's never been solved. I love returning to a small town like filled with secrets to kind of find out, you know, what happened in the past. I love all of that. I enjoyed this quite a bit. It's very predictable. There's nothing really that happens in this that I don't think people would see coming, but I enjoyed the writing. It was very easy, fast, like quick, easy reading that I enjoyed, and I ended up giving it 3.75 out of 5 stars. I then read What I Saw by Beck Nicholas. So this is another Australian book, and I was really excited when I first picked it up because the author is from Adelaide. Yeah, now she lives with her family near Adelaide, which I live in Adelaide, so that doesn't happen to me a lot, so that was exciting. So this is a YA contemporary about, so it's about a girl, so it's got 2 main characters, a girl and a boy. So the girl is like kind of the perfect valedictorian type of character who's, you know, on scholarships, and she's, you know, really got it together. She's school captain, but she's very popular, all of those things. She is they're at a dance at their school, and she gets drunk at this party. The drink is spiked and she gets a bit drunk and she goes outside to vomit, and she runs into the town bad boy, and they have like an interaction, and then they hear a like altercation of some kind going on, and it turns out that it's the bad boy's twin sister has been cornered by a bunch of guys, and he runs over to try to protect his sister, and one of the main perpetrators, there's a main villain of the piece who's trying to get into it with the male character, and one of his friends who's trying to like hold him back goes to punch the main male character in like the back of the head. He shifts at the last second and he ends up punching his own friend in the face, or punching him in the head and knocking him out like cold with like one punch. It's what we refer to in Australia either as a king hit or a coward's punch. I don't know if you have something similar to that. It's like a type of punch where you just throw one punch and it can kill people or cause a lot of damage to them because they can fall and hit their head on the ground, or Giles is just going back and forth in front of me here, guys. Yeah, that they can cause brain damage and all of those things. And so the guy who gets hit ends up in a coma, in an induced coma, and they're not sure whether he's going to recover because he's bleeding on the brain, yada yada. However, the main male character who was a victim in this situation gets accused of, the guy who did the punch says, oh, it was him, and his friends like back him up and say that it was the main male character. But the female character, who's like the perfect girl, she saw what happened, but she's got her own reasons for why she doesn't necessarily want to tell the truth, which I thought part of this was going to be trying to find out the secret of why she doesn't want to tell the truth, but I guess I won't say because it's not in the synopsis, but you find out pretty much straight away why she doesn't want to tell. I didn't like this. I didn't buy any of the character motivations. Every decision that was made, I was just like, why would someone do that? Like everything basically that happened was just, I didn't buy. And then there's a romance in there. So that this book takes place over the course of about 3 days. And the romance that's in here was so insta-lovey. It was just awful. It was insta-lovey not only because of the time period, like 3 days, come on. It was also insta-lovey just because of the circumstances. I was just like, guys, like, come on, like, we've got more important shit going on. It was just, I really didn't like it. And then I also felt like it was very surface level. Like the author seemed to be trying to deal with some particularly like hard-hitting topics, like about violence and alcohol-fueled violence and all of that type of thing, but it was all just very on the surface and it didn't really delve into any of the issues or really give any commentary on it even, really. I also, and this isn't really a critique because, but I just was something that I hoped that this was going to have, especially when I saw that it was set by an author who lived near Adelaide. I was hoping that the setting was going to be, but this is the most generic setting ever. It's just like small town, you don't know anything about it. It could literally be anywhere in the world. It didn't feel Australian, didn't feel anything like that. So I was a little bit disappointed in that as well. So I just really didn't enjoy this book, unfortunately, and I ended up giving it 2 stars. I then listened on audio to a book called With You Always by Rena Olson. This is narrated on audio by Brittany Presley. I read a book by Rena Olson last year, which I can't remember the title of, and I quite enjoyed it. That was a thrillerish novel as well, and so when I saw that my library had this one on audio, I thought I'll give it a go. So it's basically about a girl who gets swept up in a romance, a woman who gets swept up in a romance with a seemingly perfect man who you quickly discover is not as perfect as he seems, and he's kind of grooming her, like drawing her into his church, and it's all very cultish, etc. So it sounds like it's got a lot of things that it sounds like it should tick some boxes of mine and that I should enjoy, but I didn't really enjoy this book either. It all happened too quickly, I feel like, for the reader, or the listener in this case, because I didn't buy it. I didn't buy the romance. Like, this guy was so obviously not what he appeared to be, and her sister in particular is very against the relationship, and she just refuses to listen. And I understand that this happens to people, and you could kind of see that, yes, I can see that he's doing all of these things. He's isolating her, and all of that is very prevalent in relationships that have domestic violence. But I didn't buy it in the story. I just didn't feel like this main character would have ended up in this situation this quickly the way that she did, because the characters get married after like 3 months or something, despite all of the issues and all of the warning flags and everyone who's saying to her. And I'm not saying that it can't happen. Normally I feel like when this happens, it's people who are already in a vulnerable position, and the main character wasn't. I think that's partly what I struggled with. And then I found that all of the like villains of the story felt very generic, nothing special about them. The story was just, I felt like a kind of daytime TV movie, if you know what I mean. And then at the end of the story, which the story is super predictable. And then at the end, there are a lot of unanswered questions. There's a lot of things that the reader, is trying to figure out, like how we got here type of thing. And then you just don't really get any resolution to any of those questions, which I really, really didn't like. And so I enjoyed this one. I didn't hate this book, but I had a lot of problems with it, and I didn't think it was particularly well done. So in the end, I gave that 2.5 stars. I then read Gathering Blue by Lois Lowry. So this is the second book in the Giver Quartet. So it's the sequel to The Giver, but it's not like a direct sequel. It's more of a companion novel. So we're set in a different community, if you will. So I enjoyed this one. It's very predictable, but it is technically, I think, supposed to be middle grade. But one of the things I found strange about this, and I don't know why this is, reading it, I felt like the main character was like middle-aged, even though I think she was supposed to be like 12 or 13, but I'm not sure. It's never said how old she is. And for some reason, right from the get-go, I had in my head that she was like middle-aged, and then I just could not get that out of my head. That was just me though. Like, I don't know why that was happening to me. It didn't end as abruptly as The Giver. It's definitely not a totally complete story. I am assuming that The Giver and this book are going to eventually kind of merge together, and we're going to figure out how they're connected, and all of those things. One thing I really did like about this world, because it is kind of like a dystopian setting, is there's this whole thing in this world where as you get older, you get more of a name. So when you're born, you're only given a name with like 1 syllable, and then as you get older, you get 2 syllables, and then you get a 3rd syllable added on, and then like eventually, like when you're much older, you get like a 4th syllable if you make it to like really old, which I really liked that concept. I just thought that was really interesting. So I enjoyed this one like pretty much as much as I did The Giver. I'm looking forward to, like I say, continuing and kind of seeing how everything like interconnects, hopefully. So I gave that 3 stars. I then read Paper Girls Volume 4 by Brian K. Vaughan. I really enjoyed this. I don't think I enjoyed it quite as much as Volume 3, but I did enjoy it. I feel like in this one, we're starting to get some more answers. Like, I started to feel like I could kind of figure out what was going on a little bit, which I liked. I'm still very confused though. It's a very confusing, I guess I should say what this is about. This is an science fiction graphic novel about girls, a group of girls who are on a paper route. in 1988 when shenanigans ensue. Let's just say that. I love all of the like characters and how different they all are. Like they're all very different from each other, which I really like. And so yeah, I really enjoyed this installment and I gave it 3.25 stars. And then the final book that I read this past week was called When We Were Sisters by Emily Richards. So this is another one that I listened to on audio. It is narrated by Karen White, Elijah Alexander, and Rachel Fulginti. So this is a women's contemporary like chick lit kind of story. It's basically about two women who grew up in foster care together. They're not related biologically, but they consider each other sisters, and they're now fully grown, and one of them is just your like more typical kind of housewife, got a husband, kids, etc., and the other one is now like an international superstar. Like she's a singer and she's very famous, and she has been asked to take part in this documentary about the foster care system, and so she decides to take part in that, and she gets her sister involved, and it's kind of looking at their past and what happened to them. So I didn't particularly enjoy this book. First off, it's really long. This is almost 500 pages, which I just felt was way too long for this type of story. You get the two perspectives you get three perspectives. You get the two sisters, and then you also get this sister who's married. You get her husband. And I couldn't tell the two perspectives apart. And that, I don't know, is partly to do to the audiobook, because when I looked this up to check who the audiobook narrators were, was shocked to see that there were two. I knew there was a guy and a girl, but I thought that this woman was doing both of the female characters. I could not tell their voices apart. So I don't know if it's partly due to that I struggled with the perspective shifts, or if it's just also that the perspectives weren't distinct. It could be like a bit of both. I'm not really sure. The other problem that I had with it is none of this dialogue is believable at all. Every conversation that these characters have is some deep character study of them really diving deep in talking in like such grand terms about, you know, their lives and what they've learned about themselves and all of that. And it was not realistic at all. Like every conversation was some deep and meaningful, soliloquies on their growth and what happened to them in their past and all of that. So it was just not believable. I didn't really connect to either of the characters. I found the story a bit boring. I did like some of the commentary in there on the foster care system, and all of that, but in the end it was quite boring. I had a lot of problems with it. So in the end I gave that 2.5 stars. So those are the books that I finished. So now to touch on what I'm currently reading. So I'm actually currently reading 3 things, which is very unusual at this stage. Normally I've got maybe 2 things, a normal whatever I'm reading plus an audiobook. However, so on this past Monday, I started an audiobook. I started In the Still of the Night by Anne Rule. It's a true crime story. And I started it, and it was going to expire. I knew I only had a day left on it, but I was confident I could finish it in that day. And so I started it, and I think I had less than an hour to go, and I was on the bus on the way home from work, and I paused it to pick up whatever I had been reading that day, to read that while I was on the bus, and then I was going to listen to the last portion of it when I got home, and it expired, and I didn't get to finish it. So I've had to put it back on hold, because I don't know like what's happened at the end of this crime, and I kind of wanted to Google it, but then I was like, no, finish the book. So I've put it back on hold. It's an older book. It doesn't have a lot of hold, so I'm hoping that it'll come in soon, because I'm over 90% of the way through, but I didn't get to finish it. So I'm technically still in the middle of that. And then the next book that I was due to pick up on Friday, so yesterday at the time that I'm filming this, was A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, but I needed to take something to read at work, and I wasn't sure whether this was going to make me start crying straight away. And I'd already decided that I was only going to read this book at home, because I know that this is going to be really emotional, and I don't think it's going to be the type of book where it's emotional. It just makes me like shed a tear. I expect heart-wrenching sobs while reading this, and I don't want to do that in public. So I'd already decided I wasn't reading this no matter when I had to pick it up. If it was the middle of the week, end of the week, whatever, I wasn't going to read this unless I was at home. And so when I left for work on Friday, I picked up the ebook of All the King's Men by Nora Sakavic, the third and final book in the All for the Game trilogy. I read, I think, 6%. I've literally read the first chapter while I was on the bus to work, and then I had lunch. I ate lunch with a colleague, so I didn't read on my lunch break. And then on the bus on the way home, I was trying to get through that When We Were Sisters audiobook, because I should have mentioned about that audiobook too. That audiobook took me 3 days to get through because I just was not interested in listening to it, because like I said, I wasn't engaged and I found it kind of boring. And so I literally only read a chapter on the way to work. And then when I got home last night, so I'm currently reading that. I'm like 5% of the way through, but I've put that back to the side. I only read the first chapter. I put that to the side. And then I picked up when I got home last night A Monster Calls, because it was actually pretty good timing, because now I can just read this across the weekend. So I started it last night. I've read the first 100 pages, so I'm about halfway, because this is only just over 200 pages long. I'm really enjoying it so far. The writing is really beautiful. I haven't hit the really super emotional parts yet. I'm probably going to finish this today, so I expect to be sobbing later on today, so fun times ahead. So I've got this, so I'm technically reading those 3 things, which is unusual. Normally on a Saturday I would only have 1 book on the go, but I currently have 3. So that's it. Those are all the books that I have read this past week and what I am currently reading. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've got any thoughts on any of the books that I've been reading, or I'd love to chat about what you have been reading and enjoying, or reading and disliking, or what you're currently reading, or what you've already read. I just would love to chat in the comments down below. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye guys!